I'm Kyle Horner, and you're watching ICDC, the Infinite Crisis and DC Comics videocast. Today, we're doing the Batman 75th episode, and joining me is Cardell Kerr, creative director of Infinite Crisis, Harry Teasley, art director on Infinite Crisis, and none other than Mr. Jim Lee, co-publisher over at DC Entertainment. To start off, when first getting into DC Comics professionally, what excited you the most about getting to work with the likes of Batman and Superman?
Yeah, I think in some ways, if you fancy yourself a comic book creator, I think no career is complete without having worked on such iconic characters like Superman or Batman. So I think there's that element of it being kind of part of this history that's so well known. But there's also the challenge of, you're standing on the shoulders of all these legends and giants that came before you. Basically, you're stepping up to the plate. What do you got, to mix metaphors? So, it really is about what can you bring to the table to Batman to kind of make it your own. I think that's one of the core appealing things about comics, is that the characters aren't ossified. They're not brands that can no longer be changed. The worlds that they exist in are ever changing, ever evolving, and that applies to Batman, to his rogues gallery, to his gadgets, to his costume. We're constantly updating and changing and modernizing it, and at the end of the day, it's a character that's very much living and breathing just like you or me. So I think those are the kind of things and challenges and opportunities that excite a person, who's a creator, who loves drawing, who loves creating, new gadgets and new bat caves and just that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of really cool things about those characters that starts from them being so iconic and so well known to the challenge of what can you bring to these legends to make them even bigger and better.
But it also suggests to me, what is the thing that should never change? What is the core to the character?
Sure. I think there are some things that probably shouldn't be changed, but I hesitate in using the word never, because I think that limits you. I think part of the appeal of working in comic books is that you can be fearless, right? You can, when you work on iconic characters, you can't be scared about breaking the character, and you shouldn't, because if you look at Batman, there's been all these different wildly very different kind of incarnations of the characters, from the Batman that visits alternate dimensions to the Batman that fights criminals on the street corner in the darkest alleyways of Gotham City. I think you have to be fearless and realize that none of this existed until someone sat down with a typewriter or a pencil and a piece of paper and created it. So, and if you don't step up and create something, it could potentially wither away and go away because of boredom or irrelevance. So I think that's the attitude you want to take. That said, you probably don't want to give Batman superpowers. You probably don't want to bring back his parents, from the grave. Like, oh, we did this because we wanted you to become the best person possible, and so you've passed the challenge, and now you're part of the secret ninja clan of Bruce, whatever. So you probably don't. You can do that, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. So I think there's some core elements to the mythology that you wouldn't want to mess up.
Right.
He's a very sympathetic character. He's a character that's born out of tragedy. He's a character that has no superpowers. He's a character of the night. He's a character that has a hard time letting people get close to him, yet in his core, he's a character that loves and wants to protect everyone, right? So everyone represents his mother and father, but at the same time, he's this hardened warrior, who battles crime every single night. So those are the things you want to keep in mind. In terms of the character visually, you probably wouldn't want to get rid of the silhouette, right? Which is essentially the pointy ears, the bat symbol. But you look at the utility belt. That's morphed and changed colors and shapes and utility, functionality over the years. The length of the cape has changed dramatically. The type of boots, all that kind of stuff. It's you know, basically I use the squint test, which is basically if you kind of squint at the character, does it still look like Batman? And if it does, then you're good. You even look at Batmobiles. I love the fact that there are so many different versions of the Batmobile. And one of the things that appealed to me about taking out Batman was, ooh, I get to design my own Batmobile. And, you know, I flash back to being a little kid that actually had the Corgi Batmobile and playing with that for hours. And I even had the Bat boat. And I remember in the bathtub playing with this thing, you know. And so, so can I create something like that that's a modern version of what I loved as a kid that might appeal to a kid today? And so these are all the kind of things that are appealing about the opportunity of working on Batman, and things that kind of keep you up at night because you want to make sure that you're doing the best work possible.
I know that for us, we were sitting around looking at the different multiverse variants that we put in line for Batman. Like, the squint test is definitely something which I know Harry has had to work with a lot, because whenever we decide to make a gaslight version of Batman, he still needs to look like Batman. But he definitely riffs off of the creative detective angle, or conversely, you have a Nightmare Batman who really riffs off of the Batman that rules through fear in some ways, where almost like everyone looks at him almost like criminals would look at him at this point, because he's this horrible vampire creature.
Well, that's why I'm a huge supporter of your guys' work, and I'm a champion, and I cheer you on, because you guys are adding new things to the mythology. And I'll tell you, the really cool stuff we're going to use and put in the comic books. I mean, that's just the way, it's the ecosystem that exists. So you look at like Jimmy Olsen, he came out of the Superman radio show, Harley Quinn came out of the Batman animated cartoon, and so you see how these different media presentations or adaptations of the characters, they all kind of feed off each other. Obviously, filmmakers are using comic books as a source material, but, you know, obviously the success of these video games, you see the artists actually use some of the body language and some of the special effects that you guys are able to represent in the video game space, and how can we translate that into a 2D space on the page using, you know, Photoshop and you know, old school tools like pencils.
Let's talk about Batman. I mean, in talking about video games and how video games and comics sort of interact, you know, Infinite Crisis is a team game. So I'm very curious to know what you guys think of Batman's role in, you know, the Justice League and in sort of a team setting with other characters.
Right. You know, I'll tell you, honestly, when I was a kid reading Justice League, Batman was kind of the guy that headed up the communications board. You know, like yeah, you should fly to Asia. That's good for you. Yeah, you should do that because I can't. Yeah, and yeah, that missile needs to be stopped midair. I would if I had the time, but Superman, perfect. But he got really cool, I think, in the 90s. I think there was a storyline where basically it was an awesome story where Batman was a member of the Justice League. Part of his motivation in being part of the team was to keep tabs on the other characters, these other superpowered heroes, in case they went bad. He needed that backup plan. How do I take all these people down who are my friends now, but in the future they could be enemies? And that just made it super cool. Like, of course he's there. Of course he's, you know, an integral part of the Justice League. And so I think it showed that he was playing chess on a completely different dimension. He was playing 3D chess while all the other members of Justice League were still playing checkers, right? And so I think that really kind of elevated him to become the mastermind of the Justice League, and that his directives weren't just because he didn't have superpowers per se, but because he knew best. So he really got elevated to the front of the class in that storyline.
Yeah, I mean, him as a military strategic genius, it totally, like, I felt like it was one of those things that completely hit a different level, especially with OMAC and the whole satellite aspect. Like, there was a whole, I'm a big fan of that particular storyline, and how it really just kind of, it defined all three in terms of, it defined Wonder Woman and what she was capable of, it defined Batman and what he was capable of, and obviously Superman as well. And I feel like in a lot of cases the tone that they hit there is what we often use for gameplay, because we want there to be a world where when you're playing Batman, you are laying a trap for people, you are waiting, you were basically building strength as you go, and then when you all in someone, you feel like you're the knight, you feel like you're this great the greatest detective that ever lived, combined with a martial artist who's second to none.
Right. Well, I think that's the challenge for you guys, is how do you create a game where a character with no superpowers can stand toe-to-toe and take down Superman, who Batman does on a regular routine basis, like clockwork in the comic books, right? So how do you do that? And I think it's harder within the context of group dynamics, right? It's one thing for him to plan, like, I've got this kryptonite ring, you're going to step here, and then I'm going to put all the electricity of Metropolis or Gotham City through your body when you step over here. But when you've got 6 or 7 other characters running around, how does Batman coordinate that? And I think that's a challenge for you guys, and it's awesome to see that come to light, and you guys kind of balance that, in a very meaningful and entertaining and fun to play way.
Yeah. I even think it's another aspect there as well, is like we often have to deal with, not only do we have to give him his own personal and very, gameplay driven identity, but then obviously Harry, on the other hand, has to figure out, okay, this is what these characters look like, and they all have to be visually distinct enough from each other that, obviously not a problem if you're Batman and Robin. It starts to become more and more a problem the more and more people you add in and have them all doing special particle effects for their powers and other stuff. So I know he struggled with that.
You should have an unbalanced DLC or unlock mode where basically the characters play true to their powers. So Superman just like one-shots by Batman,
he just picks up the gameplay space. He picks up the gameplay space and throws it into the sun. And Superman
exactly right.
In Infinite Crisis, sometimes Batman fights alongside villains too. Also true.
The way we've actually tried to lead into that was, we look back the inspiration for our entire game, which itself was, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Right. That is that model of the multiverse. That is everything kind of coming together. All the different Batmen, all the different worlds just juxtaposing into one, because it had to be something that was bad enough, dangerous enough for everyone to become united, or at least be willing to put aside their differences for long enough in order to deal with this one particular problem.
When the entire, multiverse is at risk and everything could come crumbling down, I suppose maybe, you kind of have to put aside differences temporarily, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've actually wanted to call out Forever Evil, the most, not most recent, because I know that obviously we're currently in the middle of another crossover. But that one I felt was a good example of something where stuff went really bad. I mean, you have the Justice League, and they're suddenly gone, destroyed by an evil version of the Justice League, and you have people like Lex Luthor, who's, again, not a good guy, but he doesn't ever fight for like a cartoon caricature of a villainy. Like when I was growing up, you saw Lex Luthor, he was in this little platform that rose out of the swamp with the rest of his friends, like almost like twirling their mustaches. I mean, we've clearly come far away from that. So you have, it's very different now, and Lex really is just, he's a prideful man, and that's he almost fights for pride and ego, almost to the point where I actually love the character. I think he's great. And I think that it sums it up in many ways, because you might have a person who, again, is a bad guy, but they still have things they fight for, that they care for, or things they want to achieve. So, and I know that actually, I think that even came out a little bit in DC Online. I thought that was actually really good in terms of how that storyline was pulled together. And Jim, I think I remember seeing you talking about that extensively.
Yeah, no, I was the executive creative director on that game. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a challenge with Lex Luthor, because you want to give him, again, like Batman, some powers, right? So he gets that mech suit. But really his appeal is that incredible ego and the intellect, and how he, in some ways, is very kind of similar to Batman in terms of, they're almost kind of flip sides of the same coin. They're both billionaires. They're both ruthless. They're both smarter than everyone else. And they both, in their own way, have huge egos, right? And so how does that play out in the context of a story? So that was fun exploring in the context of a game.
Yeah, I think their interactions in Forever Evil were also, really drove that point home, right?
Right.
They really are, two sides of the same coin, absolutely.
Right. Well, I think Jeff bringing, Lex into the league, I mean, it's just it's a brilliant flip, and, makes you kind of just wonder, well, when's this all going to go bad, So I think it's a ticking bomb, right?
Yeah, I mean, forever evil among many other of the awesome, well, some of my favorite, I guess, DC arcs and Batman arcs are out there to explore for readers, and it's always interesting seeing kind of where one is inspired from the other, or where one is maybe riffing on the other, or just a whole new reinvention. And one thing that I actually wanted to bring up on that end is the Batman Essentials line that you guys have been rolling out. I think the first one. It's Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, right?
Right. I think. Are you talking about the 4-volume set?
The
3-volume.
I think it's the dollar issue, the kind of the dollar issue the highlights of Batman's.
Oh, okay, right. That's the catalog, right? The Essentials catalog, Batman Essentials catalog. That's it's something that we had a DC Universe Essentials catalog, or DC Entertainment Essentials catalog, which basically went through all the imprints and spotlighted the most critically acclaimed, the most commercially successful, the best representations of our characters, and say, hey, we should do something like this for Batman, so that people who love the character through video games or the movies or cartoons, if they want to check out the comic books, where would they start? I mean, there's 75 years of Batman stories and storylines, and it could be a little daunting. And it's good to kind of give them a roadmap of, hey, start here, read this, and that covers 70% of the mythology, and you've read the very best stuff, and now you can go and explore all these other storylines and developments of the character. And I think it's it's an exciting way to kind of present the character to a much larger audience.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have a personal favorite story moment, Jim?
Sure, of course. Yeah, I would say The Dark Knight Returns is my favorite Batman story. I'm definitely not in the minority there, but that came out in '86. I just graduated college. I was really kind of bored by mainstream comic books, and that came out, and it just kind of blew me away. The actual physical product, from the slickness of the paper to the hand coloring to the binding to the depth and sophistication of the storyline, the narrative, the storytelling. It was just all so different and bold, and it really spoke to that era, the zeitgeist of the 80s, with Reaganomics and this Batman really became the symbol of anti-authoritarianism, and I think it just really appealed to me on so many levels, and that inspired me to want to become a comic book professional. So it worked on a lot of different levels. But again, Frank Miller, who was the author of that and the illustrator, he was so fearless in taking on that mythology. He drew upon all the stuff that existed before, and he brought back the Dick Sprang version of the costume and the Neil Adams version of the costume, and then it slowly went back in time towards this very Dick Sprang version of the costume, and then he introduced this bat armor, and he used that to kick Superman's ass, and it's just like, wow, like what an epic storyline. And I just never seen anything like that before, and it was just really embraced the mythology and added so much new stuff at the same time. He really presented a character that was haunted, and I feel like in some ways possessed by the spirit of the bat. And I think there's one scene in particular where, it's very old kind of Clint Eastwood Batman, and he's got a mustache, and things are happening. The city's kind of going bad. There's chaos around him, and he's not quite sure if he wants to be Batman again. And then he takes a shower, and then he realizes he's just shaved off his mustache subconsciously, right? And like, there it is. Like, it's something he can't even control. Like, it's the city calling to him, and he can't resist. It's the Lorelei, and he's this character that is essentially possessed by Batman.
It just makes me super excited to just reread it again, because
it's always awesome in a reread, for sure.
Because even as you sum them up, you can see so many different inspirations, like the Flashpoint paradox, and how Thomas Wayne took the role of Batman. You can see aspects of that character and how he looked, compared to obviously Dark Knight Returns. So good. There's so many good lines there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I thought Dark Knight Returns also probably my top Batman story as well. I just love the way it ended, where Batman is starting again from nothing, right? Like the character, he just gets distilled down to he's just the man. Right? He's not about the toys and the gadgets and the Batmobile and everything. He's had everything taken away, starting over. It's like not even pausing. You just got to keep going. And I just thought it was an incredible kind of essential moment of that character.
You know, on the topic of like the essentials of the Batman character, when we have Gaslight Batman and Nightmare Batman, how did you guys, well, Harry, your team, and Cardell too, how did you guys kind of distill the, there are different kind of versions of him and different personifications? Well,
definitely from my perspective, whenever I look at any one of our prime characters, I always try to figure out what is that core, and then I just try to basically cut it in half, and I split each out. So every time we do a multiverse variant, they kind of really epitomize one of them. So Batman, again, like there are many things he is, but the biggest ones that we pull out were like Gadgeteer, Great Detective, I Am the Night Fear, in terms of like inspiration. So in that sense, we just took the Gadgeteer and pulled it over to the Gaslight Batman because he lives in the age of invention. It made perfect sense, and we wanted to really differentiate him. So he's not about silence and stealth. I mean, literally, he fires a bat scream that goes across the map and destroys tons and tons of property. I mean, you don't typically see that out of Batman. So
sure,
we're like,
absolutely, yeah.
So this works. And then obviously,
no, look, we're super excited by the game because it allows us to revisit this Elseworlds line that we used to publish a long time ago. Obviously, Gotham by Gaslight was part of that, and we're doing this fine comic book here. We'll plug the Infinite Crisis, right? Fight for the Multiverse, which actually has a code, so you can get. I think in the back. So I think the first issue. Has the code for the Doomsday Champion, the first day costume for use in the game, and I love all these different incarnations of the characters. From Red Sun to Gotham by Gaslight, it just presents that core mythology in a very different, entertaining and creative way. And I think it's just a testament to the popularity of the characters that they can be presented in so many different ways and still be appealing and still find the fan base.
So that's it for today's show. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Horner.
I'm Cardell Carr.
I'm Harry Teasley.
I'm Jim Lee.
And we'll see you next time in the Multiverse.